in the midst of a rally today, and one of the reasons maybe after coming off the highs that we started to pop up again, Fox Business Network just confirming that the president of China, Xi Jinping, will meet with the delegation from the U.S. that's in Beijing this week to talk trade. That seems like it would be good news, right? That he would only meet with Lighthizer, Mnuchin and company if they were getting close to a deal. At least that might be the read for investors. Wall Street Journal executive Washington editor Jerry Seib joins us now. Is that right, Jerry, that, you know, if you're the president of China, you're going to sit down and meet personally with these guys? We must be making progress, don't you think?
I think so. I think it's important for two reasons. A, it probably is a sign there's progress being made. And B, the symbolism is important. It shows that President Xi wants there to be progress to be made, would like to get to the finish line here. I think we can assume that he wants a deal near March 1st, and I think it's also interesting that President Trump yesterday said he's willing to let that deadline slip a little bit, not necessarily raise tariffs on March 1st, as was the plan, if there's progress being made. So it appears that both sides have a real vested interest in at least creating the appearance of progress. I have to caution, though, you know, there's a long way to go here. Everybody agrees on that. And in particular, there's a question of how the U.S. is going to enforce any deal that's made with the Chinese on trade. So being close is not the same as being there.
Let me follow up then on enforcement, because that's something that the U.S. Trade Rep Robert Lighthizer publicly, in fact, when he was in the Oval Office last time we saw him with President Trump, he brings it up repeatedly. Enforcement, enforcement, enforcement. From people you talk to, what is a mechanism of enforcement that this administration might use? Because this will be important, by the way, to investors. Is it just quite simply tariffs, keeping the tariffs in place? Because then a deal might mean that some of the tariffs don't get rolled back.
Well, I think part of enforcement is the Chinese knowing that there's the risk of tariffs coming back. But I think there has to be, this is almost like an arms control situation in which there have to be negotiated mechanisms in which one side can look inside at what the other side is doing. And that may involve having more transparency in terms of what the Chinese government reports. It may mean having some U.S. representatives on the ground. It may mean having a way in which U.S. companies can more clearly declare when they're having problems. You know, there's also a related issue, though, which is it's not just enforcement, it's systemic changes in China, dealing with things like the amount of subsidies that they provide to their domestic producers to compete with American companies. Those are tough issues. You know, the easy ones are, we'll buy more of your soybeans. That's a relatively easy, quick, and, by the way, temporary fix. These things we're talking about now are the tougher, permanent ones.
Well, the term they use all the time is structural changes. I mean, to me, it's kind of cultural changes in many ways, business culture, in that, you know, for example, on the forced transfer of technology, if you talk to government officials or business leaders that have dealt in China or are from China, they look at it, you know, completely different than people do in the U.S. They'll say that's not what happens. I mean, that's just kind of the price of doing business in China, that you have to make a deal with a Chinese company. I mean, so you're asking them to kind of just basically change the way they've done business for, you know, the last however many years. Yeah,
you're right, and it's not forever, but it's certainly for the last 2 decades. You know, when there was a switch, you know, the Chinese wanted U.S. investment, were willing to open the doors, and they saw it as to the country's economic benefit. In the last 2 decades, that's changed some. I mean, I think they believe that foreign investment is helpful to allow them to build up their own domestic industries, and that's now the goal. And the goal is to create national companies that can dominate areas of the economy. That's different, and that's certainly been a significant change in the last decade or 2 decades. There is a requirement to roll back some of the habits that I guess have developed over that period of time. And the Chinese are willing to do that to some extent, probably, but certainly not as easily or as quickly or as much as Bob Lighthizer is trying to make them.
Right. He's known as a hawk and probably is pushing them quite hard. Good to see you, Jerry. Thanks a lot. Jerry Seib from the Journal.